Strength is never a weakness. Weakness is never a strength. When you begin focusing on strength, I found this when talking to Mike Mutzel, who was a keto intermittent fasting fan for many, many years. I found this when I was on the podcast with Carnivore MD, Paul Saladino, who was a keto intermittent fasting fan for many years. As soon as they became focused on strength, they started understanding the value of eating enough, often enough, with sufficient carbohydrates specifically to fuel that workload, that performance, that bout of lifting in the gym. You cannot, as you know, just go in there and cross T's and dot I's. It's not just I did this many sets and reps. You have to train hard enough. You have to take your body somewhere it's never been before. The stimulus has to be sufficient to trigger a response, and it has to be progressive over time. And if you ever go in and don't outperform, maybe not last week, but certainly last month, if there isn't some sort of progression, you're not continually taking your body somewhere it hasn't been before, you'll stop progressing from that stimulus. And so you have to be sufficiently fueled. We also used to believe, and I think the keto people had argued for a long time, your liver produces carbohydrates and puts them into the bloodstream, and you can drive a car, 100 miles an hour on a half tank of gas as easily as you can on a full tank of gas. Those were always the arguments that have been made over the years. But as it turns out, that we don't store carbohydrates in just one place in the muscle. They're stored in different places in the muscle. When you top off your carbohydrate stores, the last place that's filled is also the first place that's drained during training. And that's in the sarcoplasmic reticulum, where the carbohydrates are first released. They trigger, calcium, which fires the troponin, tropomyosin, muscle contraction, filament, contraction. For those people who study exercise phys, that stimulus is most optimal with more carbohydrates, or a full, load of carbohydrates. And once those start to decline during training, then you're not going to have as good of a training performance. So it does matter that you have sufficient carbohydrates to fuel the workout.
Great segue here, because I'd love to talk specifics here on training, specifically building muscle and strength training. We talked about earlier on cardio not being near as effective for fat loss or muscle building as training. And I think a lot of people will be like, well, if I'm trying to lose weight, why would I go in and lift heavy? Like, shouldn't I just be constantly having my heart rate elevated? So let's talk to the guys out there how to set up, once again, they're not going to be a true beginner. So not somebody that's just like their first day stepping into the gym, but they've been bouncing around. They've been, maybe been doing some CrossFit. Maybe they've been, doing the express lane at the gym. What does a good strength program look like in terms of days, volume, frequency, exercises? Is it free weights, machines? Is it cables? Is it a variation of all that? I know there's a lot there, but yeah, if we can kind of walk through, just like we did with the nutrition, some of these core fundamental principles that we need.
Well, the ultimate question was, what does a good strength training program look like? But the intro, you said that people oftentimes train differently to lose weight. They focus on the energy expenditure side. And we spoke earlier about the fact that it's the energy intake side that is most relevant to weight loss. Very simply, you lose weight in the kitchen. You don't exercise away weight necessarily. I mentioned it's not terribly effective. It's not terribly efficient. Your body compensates for it. It downregulates the number of calories that you burn, all of those reasons that we don't use the gym to exercise. Getting our heart rate up for an extended period of time is great for health, but it's not the best thing for weight loss. So lose weight in the kitchen, create a calorie deficit, maintain the deficit. Now, unfortunately, in terms for maintaining a calorie deficit for weight loss isn't the best stimulus for muscle gain. When you're in a calorie deficit, it's harder to gain muscle. That would be another reason why you should eat more protein more often, is if you're in a calorie deficit. But even then, even if you're eating more protein more often, if you're in a calorie deficit, it's very hard to build muscle, particularly for the person that you described. The person watching us, the people watching us today are intermediate lifters at the very least. They're no strangers to the gym. They're in there working out. And sometimes they get frustrated because they've been at it for a year or 2 years or 10 years. And they kind of look the same as they did last year or 5 years ago. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, because ultimately lifespan and health span is dependent upon that we continue to do these things. When they measure people's strength, it's less about their current level of strength and more about what they had to do to get there and have had to continue to do to get there. So it's an ongoing process, whether it's 30 minutes, 150 minutes of cardio a week, or it's weightlifting 3 times a week. Those things never end. There's no finish line to this deal. That's one of the challenging things with people who go on programs is that they never end. That's why it should become a lifestyle. It should be simple, sensible, and sustainable. And it should be something that you can adhere to long-term. Compliance is the science. Okay, so if I'm encouraging someone to gain muscle in the gym, I'm asking them first and foremost to try and get into a small calorie surplus. And that would be dependent upon whether or not they had a significant amount of body fat that they intended to lose first. Maybe I would put them in a neutral calorie rather than a surplus or a deficit, just at a calorie maintenance, and try and do a body recomposition, which can sometimes happen if you have a significant amount of body fat and you're somewhat undertrained. You can gain muscle and lose fat at the same time. The less fat you have to lose and the more experienced you are, the less likely it is you're going to gain muscle in a calorie maintenance. So put you in a slight calorie surplus, and 300 or 500 calorie surplus is just as good as a 1,500 calorie surplus, probably better, because you won't gain as much fat. And so don't think that just because you eat more calories, you're going to gain more muscle, because the limiting factor there is physiologically, you just can't build muscle that fast. I don't care how hard you train and how much you eat. That process is laborious and it takes time. So be patient, be consistent, be persistent. Get into a small calorie surplus, get sufficient protein, about 1 gram a day, get 4 evenly spaced meals a day would be my recommendation. So now the stimulus, if you want to build muscle, and I don't encourage people to go to the gym and just exercise, because this has to be measurable and progressible. There's a difference between training and exercise. Training being measurable and progressible, exercise being battle ropes and burpees and burning calories, or supposedly because you sweat and breathed hard. That's not anything anybody enjoys. Any trainer can tire any trainee out and make them go home exhausted and sweaty and breathing hard. It doesn't mean they got a result. It doesn't mean it was an effective training session. So I don't recommend battle ropes and burpees. I recommend weightlifting. In my book, I actually stole it from Dr. Brett Contreras, PhD glute guy. Of course, I credit him for it. It's called The Evidence-Based Guidelines of Hypertrophy, one of the most thorough charts and easy to read, but it goes down the list. First and foremost is frequency. Most people should train each body part twice a week. Now, whether you do a full body Monday and a full body Friday, or you do a upper Monday, lower Tuesday, upper Thursday, lower Friday, doesn't matter. Okay, training every body part twice a week, mainly because you want to train your body part and give it about 2 to 3 days to rest and then train it again. If you give it a full week or 10 days, you may stimulate a little bit of growth, but then that might also, in detraining, it might also decline over the course of the time that you've been away from training. So the idea is just to keep tacking on these little bouts of stimulus so you can continue to grow. So about twice a week per body part. The split I really set up based on somebody's personal schedule. If you're a busy individual, you're going to be able to go to the gym less. Then I'm going to have you do a full body workout, Monday and Friday. I get people who work a ton of hours during the week. I might have them go in Wednesday night and do a really quick full body workout, or Wednesday morning early, and then have them do their longer, harder sessions on the weekend, Saturday and Sunday, when they're well rested, well fed. And some people who want to train even more, I might have them split chest in the morning on Saturday, back at night on Saturday night, quads in the morning on Sunday, and hamstrings at night on Sunday night. And then Wednesday is a full body workout, just to keep the progress going. So that'd be how I would design something for a busy professional. But if you've got all the time in the world and you want to have the best program, I think you should train at least 4, possibly 5 days a week. Break that up into whether it's a push-pull legs or it's an upper lower. But now we have to talk about what's the most sufficient training to stimulate growth. You can build just as much muscle lifting heavy weights for 5 reps as you can, lifting a medium weight for 12 reps as you can, lifting a lightweight for 20 to 30 reps, so long as they're to within a rep of failure. That's what we call intensity. The heavier weights, obviously, you're going to get stronger because strength is specific. It has a nervous system component, but strength doesn't drive hypertrophy. So you could lift a lighter weight for 12, 15 reps. And the heavier weight, you may incur more fatigue and potentially increase your susceptibility or exposure to injury. And so those are all considerations to have if you want strength as opposed to size.